All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I'm going to do a video on two players that played together their whole career, that being John Stockton and Karl Malone. And for those who already know basketball or just know even a little bit about basketball, I mean, this just makes perfect sense to do these two players together for this video because their careers are just, they just played together throughout their entire career, and it would be almost no need to separate them into two videos because of what they were able to do as a tandem. So that's what I'm gonna be covering today: John Stockton and Karl Malone, what they were able to accomplish in their careers, what they brought to the table, and of course these are two players that will go down in history, or have already gone down in history, as two of the best players without a shadow of a doubt who never won a championship. Definitely the best tandem all time that never won a championship. So if you don't know already, you're going to learn more about both of them today. So let's get right into it. So to start off, I'm going to start with John Stockton. John Stockton came into the NBA in the 84-85 season, and that was the same season Michael Jordan was drafted as well. And he entered the NBA after playing 4 years in college at Gonzaga. And when he finished playing there after his 4 years, he was the all-time leader in assists and steals, which is ironic because that's what he ended up doing in the NBA as well. By the time he was done playing, he finished as the all-time leader in assists and steals. So that's what he was able to do at Gonzaga. Each year he was there, his points and assists went up. When he first started off playing there, he didn't really get much playing time, but each year as he went forward, he started to get playing time, and his statistical output increased year by year. So he came into the 84 draft, and he was drafted number 13 overall in the first round by the Utah Jazz. And then the following season, Karl Malone came out of college, out of Louisiana Tech, where he played 3 years. And he was able to bring them to the NCAA tournament for the first time in their history in the 84 season. And he was drafted number 13 overall in the first round in the 85 draft. So they came onto the team 1 year apart. Now, John Stockton, he was not a starter. He was not the starting point guard for the Utah Jazz right away. He wasn't the starting point guard until his fourth season. Karl Malone, he started right away. He came onto the team, and he was the starting power forward from day one. So it took them a little while to actually develop the overall connection that they would end up having because of John Stockton not starting right away. But once he did become a starter in the 87-88 season, his first year as a starter, he led the league in assists, averaging nearly 14 a game. And he ended up leading the league in assists from that season, the 87 season, all the way to the 96 season. So that was 9 consecutive seasons that this man led the NBA in assists, which is the most in NBA history. Nobody has more years in their career where they led the league in assists more times than John Stockton did. 9 times. Also holds the most assists per game in a single season. And if you look up what is the highest assists per game average in a single season, it will take you to Basketball Reference. Please look up how many times John Stockton is on that list. And I'm not going to lie, I did not count, but between him and Magic Johnson, their names are on that list so frequently. I mean, that just goes to show how consistent year in and year out this man was as a facilitator for the Utah Jazz. And of course, it did help to have a player like Karl Malone to pass the ball to, who could just flat out score. When Karl Malone first came into the league in his rookie season, he averaged about 14 points a game. From that point on, year 2, all the way to his second to last season, year 18, he did not average less than 20 points per game. All right, so for 17 straight seasons, he averaged over 20 points per game. And from the 87 season, which would be his third season, all the way to the 98 season, for 11 seasons, he averaged 25 points per game or more. And for the majority of those seasons, except for maybe about 2 of them, he averaged double-digit rebounds. And the years he didn't do that, it was like 9.5, 9.8 rebounds. So he was a walking double-double. So both of these players were dominant players for a long period of time. Now, within the 80s decade, though, they didn't really have too much playoff success. They were still warming up. They were just getting started. Of course, as I mentioned already, John Stockton didn't start right away. So they were still developing in the 80s. Usually they would get bounced out the first round. There was a couple years where they made it to the second round. But they didn't really start to make deep playoff runs until the 90s came around. In the 92 playoffs, they made it to the Western Conference Finals, where they would fall short to the Portland Trail Blazers led by Clyde Drexler. They lost to them in 6 games, and of course, that was the year the Blazers ended up losing in the finals to the Bulls, led by Michael Jordan. And then in the 94 season, they made it to the Western Conference Finals again, where they would end up losing to the eventual champions, that being the Houston Rockets, led by Hakeem Olajuwon, and they lost to them in 5 games. And then in the 96 season, they got to the Western Conference Finals again, and they got closer this time. They were able to push the Seattle Supersonics to 7 games, but they fell short, and that was the year the Supersonics went on to play the Michael Jordan-led Bulls in the finals, where they would end up losing. So they had, almost like every other season, they were getting to the Western Conference Finals, but they kept coming up short, and it wasn't until the 97 season they were able to finally get over the hump and get to the finals. That was the year they beat the Rockets in 6 games, and John Stockton hit the game-winning jumper that closed out the series in Game 6. That was the year that they tried to form a big three on the Rockets, that is, with Hakeem and Clyde Drexler and Charles Barkley. But it didn't work out. The Jazz were able to knock them out, and they would end up going to the finals. That was the year that Karl Malone won his first MVP award over Michael Jordan, even though till this day people claim that it was controversial. However, Karl Malone did lead the league in player efficiency rating that year. So at the end of the day, I mean, you know, it is what it is. He got the award. However, he did fall short. The Jazz as a whole fell short to the Bulls in the 97 finals in 6 games. And that was a very tight 6-game series. 3 of the 4 games that the Bulls won were by single digits. Matter of fact, 3 of the 4 games that the Bulls won were really by game-winning shots. Michael Jordan hit the buzzer beater in Game 1. Game 2, they won. Games 3 and 4, the Jazz won. And then Game 5 came down to the wire. Michael Jordan hit the go-ahead 3-point shot with about 25 seconds left in Game 5. That was the flu game. And then in Game 6, Steve Kerr hit the go-ahead shot that pretty much ended the game and ended the series. So the Jazz were very competitive with the Bulls, but they fell short. And then the next year after that, they got back to the finals again. And in that year, they were able to defeat the up-and-coming Lakers team with Shaq and Kobe. That was in the Western Conference Finals. And they squared off with the Bulls again in the finals. And they were able to win Game 1. Now, they actually had home court advantage over the Bulls, too, in 98. Because they finished with the same record, but they beat them twice in the regular season. So they had home court advantage. They were able to win Game 1. The Bulls came back and won Game 2 in Utah. They blew them out. The Jazz got blown out by the Bulls, which was an anomaly because if you look at both finals, all the games were very competitive between the Jazz and the Bulls. There wasn't that much difference in the score. Like, most of the games were single digits, no matter who won. But for whatever reason, in Game 3 in 1998, the Jazz didn't show up. They got beat by like 40 points. They lost Game 4. Game 5, they were able to win in Chicago. They forced a Game 6. They had a 3-point lead with under a minute to go. And, of course, most people know by now that, you know, Jordan stole the show at the end. He scored, stripped Karl Malone, scored again. John Stockton missed the 3. They could have potentially won the game and kept them in the series. But they came up short and lost in 6 games. So, and then after that, going forward, John Stockton and Malone, they both played into the 2000s. They made the playoffs year in and year out, but they weren't able to get back to the finals again. As a matter of fact, they never even got back to the Western Conference Finals. And by 2003, John Stockton retired. Karl Malone played one more season, and he was on the Lakers team. They tried to form a big four with, of course, Shaq and Kobe, and then Gary Payton came on as well. They tried to form a super team, but they came up short in the finals against the Detroit Pistons. And Karl Malone did suffer an injury in that season, and also he had some lingering injuries in the finals as well. And he was never able to capture a championship. They came up short, but Karl Malone finished his career as the second all-time leading scorer, scoring over 36,000 points. Of course, LeBron will most likely pass him probably by the end of this season. But that just goes to show, with his longevity, of course, how consistent he was year in and year out. And as I stated before, John Stockton finished his career with the most assists all-time and most steals. So these dudes put in a lot of work year in and year out. They just weren't able to bring home a championship. They came very close. Of course, the Western Conference in the 90s decade was very competitive, and when they finally did break through, they just ran into a team with a player by the name of Michael Jordan. So that's just what happened. But these are two all-time great players. I wanted to combine them into this video because their careers are so linked with each other, because they played together for the amount of time that they did. They were two all-time great players, and they deserve a lot of respect for what they were able to accomplish. John Stockton being a 10-time All-Star, making the All-NBA team 11 times, twice on the first team, 6 times on the second team, 3 times on the third team, making the All-NBA defensive team 5 times. Karl Malone being a 14-time All-Star and making the All-NBA team 14 times as well in total. That being 11 times on the first team, twice on the second team, and once on the third team. And even though Karl Malone is not really known for being a defensive player, he actually did make the all-defensive first team 3 times and the second team once as well. And he was a 2-time MVP award winner, once in the 97 season, as I stated before. And he also did win in the 99 season, which was the lockout shortened season. So that's a rundown on what these players were able to accomplish in their careers. I hope you guys did enjoy. And I appreciate, again, all the love and support I've been getting so far with my YouTube channel. I thank you very much. And hopefully you guys learned a lot today. I wish everybody a blessed day. All glory be to God. Thanks again.